I also, been thinking about, media, right? And I think we've both been a little unsettled by some of the capitulative nature of specifically TYT when it comes to certain issues, whether it's trans rights or some stuff on immigration or some stuff on, BLM. I think that obviously I had Cenk on the show and we got into it a little back and forth, but the idea of trying to break bread with the right in order to come to agreement on certain issues is a losing strategy and absolutely sacrifices communities that are in the crosshairs, quite literally, of the white nationalists on the other side. But you recently said that you were going to stop. You were a contributor to TYT for a couple of years there. Can you just tell me about your work with them and what caused you recently to say that you were going to stop?
Yeah, I think, the normalizing of everything that this conversation has been complaining about, you and I complaining about, the normalizing of that at the expense. You and I just sat down and had a wonderful, critical conversation of the party that we associate with, the Democratic Party. And it was not, it's not in trying to normalize MAGA and pretend that MAGA is not a danger to people's lives or lived experience. And I think when I see Cenk and I see Anna on interacting in that way, where they're pretending that things aren't as they are, and they're doing this both sidism, I'm frustrated beyond belief, because less with Anna because I have very limited interactions with her, but more with Cenk, a person who sat beside me and called me brother and said that, oh, I believe that you should run for president, right? And for me to hear that from you, and then you normalize the people who are threatening my life, it's more than unsettling. It's off-putting, and it's also the danger that you would risk the other 75 or 76 people that work at TV.
Yeah, what's up?
When Cenk looks at Mondale Robinson and, understands who he is and what he's accomplished. He's the mayor. He's got a progressive conviction. And he says, you know what, man, you should run for president. Do you think that's Cenk just being like a used car salesman, con artist who wants to flatter, Mondale and cuddle up to him a little bit, make him, wow, this guy thinks really highly of me? Or do you think Cenk has undergone such an ideological pivot that he's really gone through such a 180 because of Trump's second election that everything about his politics has changed? Because I think it's so revealing the way that he talks about Mondale now versus the way that he apparently spoke about him just 12 months ago.
Well, to be fair to Cenk, he's actually reserved a lot of his anger for Mondale. It's not like he's smeared him in the same way that he's smeared Ben Dixon. Do you remember that clip we reacted to where Cenk was like, Mondale's a good guy.
That's true.
I don't know why he didn't call me. He should have, hashed this out in private, but I don't think he's a grifter or something like that, which was interesting, right? That he seemingly has more respect for Mondale, even though Mondale left in a far more aggressive and sort of adversarial way
on Ben's show.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When Ben stopped working for TYT, he did it quietly. He did it privately. Mondale, when he left the Young Turks, did it in about as dramatic and, intense a way you possibly could. But Cenk, for whatever reason, still seemingly has more respect for the guy. And I do think it's more about the fact that, Trump's reelection kind of just broke Cenk's brain, and he, in a combination with the desire to get more attention and money, decided that he had to go in this direction. But yeah, as we've documented pretty frequently, Cenk was singing an entirely different tune 6 months before the election, 4 months before the election, calling Donald Trump a straight up Nazi, and asking people like Mondale to run so that he wouldn't have to. I remember that was his line. I reached out to all these different progressives, mayors, etc., trying to get them to run for president. They all said no, so I had to step up to the plate. That was his line. That was one of his excuses for why he himself ran for president. But yeah, I think in his heart of hearts, Cenk probably does still have some respect for Mondale.
TYT's lived experience or life, work. People like JR have been at TYT since the beginning, so it belongs to him as well. Cenk has in the lower third of the screen all the time. It says, "You're my boss," talking about the people who subscribe, the listeners. If he believed that, he would walk away right now, because he is not the TYT that we subscribe to. He's not the TYT that we need in this moment. There's nothing The Young Turk has become the old turncoat, and he has to accept that and step away if he truly cares about the other shows on that network, so as to not sink that ship. Because right now he's wait. And I don't think people are being honest about the danger of normalizing sitting, talking about having drinks and beer with people like the folk on the right. The
Charlie
idea
Kirk,
that,
Tim
oh my
Pool.
God. Yeah. I mean, and I mean, the idea that Anna had all the smoke for Karen Bass and didn't once in her rants on Twitter mention anything about climate change. She didn't, not once did she mention anything about the 800, that LA is not a city, it's a county. It is a city, but it's also a county, and these fires are not just in the city. The lack of nuance that exists in them because of, some people are calling it a grift. I don't know what it is. It's, if they're trying to keep up with the algorithm, it's scary to me that we are playing this game with people's lives, and that is not hyperbole. When I saw Cenk, and I literally almost threw my computer, and for this reason, I didn't get to finish your interview with Cenk. Sorry about that. But when I saw him say to you, over you, that you're playing the minority game, and I'm looking like, you're talking to someone who's telling you their existence, and you're telling her it doesn't matter, or you're not, you shouldn't feel threatened. Even though we watch Donald Trump say the China virus in an intentional way to invoke a certain thing from certain people, and then we deliberately try to play out the fact that we immediately in Atlanta saw people starting to get killed, Asian people starting to get threatened at work immediately. This is not just a correlation, it's causation. And Cenk is playing that down, and that to me is disgusting. I am not here to say that there's no problems with the Democratic Party, because we know them all too well. I mean, you and I just had a 30-40 minute articulating the problems with this administration and all of them before that. But we also know that they are not equal to the racist people who are trying to kill me, who has doxed me, who are trying to kill other people, and who are telling people that we need to destroy families and send people back places that are unhealthy and unsafe for them.
Yep. Amen. I mean, that's exactly right. Yeah, that was a really rough moment. And I think that it's ultimately sadly, because, you know, TYT has welcomed people like myself and you into the fold. But I also just want to, you know, just say for the record, like, I had a media career before I started with TYT. I had an MSNBC special all on my own. I was working at National Geographic. You have had a robust career.
And that's something that Gavin pointed out to me before I watched this earlier, but that's really actually impressive as fuck, dude. I would be bragging about this way more if I were Francesca. Working at National Geographic sounds like an insanely cool gig. I mean, it's very rare that you get to have a job that a fourth grader would dream about having. You know what I mean? Working at National Geographic is one of those jobs that feels like it doesn't even fucking exist anymore. That would be so badass. I could think of myself being a fifth grader in Mrs. Clark's class, reading her you know what I'm saying? That's a cool job. And I'll be talking about it way more. It's probably cooler than the Young Turks.
Oh, definitely. Well, and especially when she worked there, I imagine that was before Disney acquired Nat Geo. Now Disney owns National Geographic, and I'm sure they still produce a lot of good content. I don't pay much attention to it, but back in the day, it was an even more serious outlet, an even more serious publication. I remember my dad was a religious reader of National Geographic.
Checks out.
He used to have like a stack a mile long of old issues that were just piled up in my parents' room as a kid. Just like the whole wall was like stacked in fucking Nat Geo. But yeah, I'd love to get her perspective on that if we ever get the chance to talk to Francesca. I'd like to get her perspective on, you know, the organization before and after the Disney acquisition and what it was like to work there, because that is a super cool job.
Yeah, and something that we really have to underline for everyone and make sure people take away from this is that you're dealing with really accomplished individuals here that are delivering the criticisms against the Young Turks. Now, it would be a lot easier to dismiss the things that Gavin and I say. Like Gavin and I, we don't have a resume with any media organizations on it besides the Vanguard podcast, right? I guess Gavin wrote for Taste of Cinema about a decade ago. You know what I mean? But we don't have a bunch of experience in this world. And then, of course, you've got Mondale, who not only has other experiences in media, but he was tremendously involved in black male voter outreach during the Bernie Sanders era. He led an organization. He's now the mayor of a fucking town in North Carolina. Francesca just listing off. Oh, yeah. I mean, I saw about 5 or 10 minutes before we went live from 10 years ago. It was a Francesca video that wasn't even from TYT. It was from a network I'd never even heard of. So she's been around. She carries all this experience. She knows what the differences are between independent media and network legacy media. She's been through it all. And these are two people who are coming forward and saying, this network is not practicing what they preach. They're not living up to their espoused values. And even though it's hurtful, we have to talk about it. And I also thought it was really interesting to point out the level of compassion that Mondale had for Francesca's experience as a Chinese American woman, right? Talking about how, hey, bro, I didn't forget about all the shit that happened during COVID with the China virus and the Wuhan flu and all of the racist bigotry and the Stop Asian Hate things that needed to happen, because I have legitimate solidarity. I am not interested in going with whatever is the topic du jour. I'm interested in fighting for everyone's rights. And he illustrated that there. And that's the difference between a guy like him and a guy like Cenk.
Yep, 100%. And again, it was Cenk who literally called Donald Trump Hitler. Said it's not an exaggeration to call this man Hitler. Now he wants to turn around and gaslight his own employees who are of, different affected minority statuses. He wants to gaslight them and say they don't have a right to be afraid and express that fear. When again, he was calling Donald Trump Hitler. Like, what kind of madness is that? That's insanity.
Yeah, and it was AJ Plus. That was the video that was
recommended. I thought it was Al Jazeera. I was like, but I didn't want to say that in case
I also didn't want to say it in case I was wrong. So I was thank you for somebody pointing that out in chat.
Yeah.
Career separate from TYT. None of this is about our own personal brands or our own, plays. And Cenk did not make you or I. So that's really important to name. But I do think it's sad that even though they allow people like us into the fold and the fray, they refuse to learn from us or listen to us. And I think that when you have been doing this work for so long and you still cannot grasp the idea of intersectionality, how race and gender and class all intertwine with one another, and how the right, the fascist goal is to divide us based on these lines. I don't know like who you are. Like I don't even know if you're smart. You know what I mean? I don't even know. First of all, I don't know who your political mentors are. I don't know who you look up to. I don't know what your touchstones are. I don't know if you know your history in terms of like civil rights, women's rights, gay rights struggle in this country. I don't know anything. I call into question all of that. It sounds like you are just an opportunistic mouthpiece.
I think it's fair to call him that, right? I think it's fair to call him an opportunistic mouthpiece. And I want to delve into that a little bit more, because just yesterday we were talking about how he doesn't get enough smoke for naming his progressive news organization the Young Turks after literally denying the Armenian genocide into adulthood, right? It's easy to be like, oh, he changed his mind. He doesn't believe in those old blog posts anymore. God love him, as Cenk would say. I hope he doesn't believe that anymore. I hope that his connection and his relationship with Anna has really made him feel guilty about the way that he talked about the horrors of the Armenian genocide and erased them early in his career. I hope that he really does feel bad about the way that he wrote about women back in the day, right? I hope that he does feel really bad that in his roots, in his origin story, he was just an angry right winger, right? What is interesting about that is it does seem like he really just pivoted because Barack Obama was ascending, and then he's ridden the wave the whole time. So it's like, I don't even know. And Gavin, I feel like you're maybe a little more charitable to him because you watched him for a longer time make these progressive cases. But I get such used car salesman energy from the guy. I mean, I really just can never, ever believe that he means anything that he says ever again.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if he ever, to what extent he believed what he said, or if he was just trying to kind of go where the winds were blowing and saw a lane for himself. Either way, I think Francesca's critique is absolutely founded, that it doesn't really seem like there's any sort of an actual movement-based strategy behind what he's doing. And he's certainly not, taking any accountability from his community or his audience or even his coworkers and employees. Certainly not. And it does seem like he's just become an opportunistic mouthpiece, willing to sell out to the, biggest crowds where the money's at, the Polymarket studio. He said multiple times now, unabashed, that he'd happily go to Mar-a-Lago and talk with Donald Trump. So, yeah, I mean, it's very clear that he's in it for himself at this point. He probably does feel betrayed by people like Francesca. That's how narcissists think. they can't take criticism. They can't take good faith pushback. They view it as an attack. They view it as an insult. And that's led him to this very, dark and kind of confused place, which isn't even getting him what he wants. It's not bringing him more attention. It's not necessarily, restoring the financial viability of his brand. And he's doing it all at the expense of his personal relationships with people that at one point admired him and trusted him.
Yeah.
Who wants clicks time and time again. And like, look, I think Mondale, probably I could speak for you, open and willing to have these debates on the show. Sadly, there is no shade of gray at this point between its two main hosts. And yes, as I told Cenk, I do feel very implicated. I have felt implicated by their takes, specifically around crime and policing in years past, definitely by this new heel turn since Trump's reelection, and absolutely by the misrepresentation of the Los Angeles fires and who the responsibility lies on. It is enraging, to say the least.
It's dastardly. And I also think, how do we have credibility as people that are part of I consider myself part of the TYT network, right? I'm still a subscriber because I care about the people on that show. I definitely won't. I think I'm all down for starting a petition to force Cenk and Anna to walk away. Give JR the rim. Give you the rim. I don't care. I think we should get serious about pushing them away, because I don't like ceding footprints. And I think TYT's footprint in the progressive space is too big just to walk away from the institution. I do think the person driving the ship is about to run us into an iceberg at fast pace. So I think, how can we criticize Elon Musk for his misuse?
The audience has to seize the Young Turks away from Cenk and Anna. We have to show up at their headquarters and perform a citizen's arrest and say the Young Turks is a public utility. It will be managed by us, the loyal viewers of this show, the TYT army. Please step aside.
I got really stoned one night and envisioned a sketch of me and Gavin going to Los Angeles, Michael Moore style, and getting a megaphone and being like, "Hello, we're here. We're looking for the home of progressives, everyone. Hello, I'm looking for Cenk Uygur. Cenk, hello, I'm looking for the home of progressives. I'm not finding anything. I found the home of progressives right out here, but please, sir, we're trying to bring back progressive politics. Could you please bring back the home of progressives? I'm a big fan of yours, sir. Back when you were giving the people a good understanding of these issues, and now it's not drug users that are starting the fire, sir. Please don't do
Yeah, it'll be like in Catfish, where he finally confronts the subjects of his documentary after the whole film, goes and knocks on their door. We can go, see what's up. No, I'm just kidding. That would be terribly awkward. But either way, I like.
We brought beer.
Yeah, I like. We brought some beer. Let's have a beer. We've just been trying to have a conversation, man. No, but I do like Mondale just having the balls on the Bitchuation Room, which again is not a TYT owned show, but it is part of the TYT podcasting network, from what I understand. Takes a lot of balls to say that on the show, and obviously it takes a lot of balls of Francesca too, to invite him on, have this conversation in the first place. But yeah, straight up saying, we got to get these fuckers out of here. Like, they didn't just build this. Obviously, Cenk's the CEO or whatever, but a lot of people helped build this, and a lot of people's reputations are on the line, as they're about to talk about also, or mention. There's people at this organization that don't agree with what Cenk and Anna are doing. They don't agree at all with it, but they rely on this company for their healthcare, right? They rely on this company to pay rent, right? And then they're put in this awkward situation where they can't even be honest about how they feel, leading to them, feeling compromised, which is an excruciating situation to be put in if you have principles and you actually got into this business because you give a shit about politics.
Yeah, I really feel for J.R. Jackson, man. During my research of the early days of TYT, seeing him be around for all of that, not really get enough credit ever, in my opinion, from the main show, and then to have to kind of be the guy in the background that watches them torpedo all of this, it's got to be devastating for him. So my heart is really with J.R. Jackson for sure.
Yeah, I imagine he's one of the people that I think either Mondale or Francesca is about to bring up, who doesn't necessarily agree with what's going on, but who knows? Let's keep playing this.
Of his Twitter platform or his media platform if we don't do the same to them too? How are we taken serious when we criticize Bezos and his media platform and them unwilling to do something they've always done when the editorial board was not allowed to publish their endorsement?
That's right.
When we don't criticize home. So I think that this for me was a no-brainer. Plus, I remember I grew up with my mom telling me stories about being sprayed with the water hole in the town where I am mayor right now, because she was in this wrong spot at the wrong time and she was Black. My mom telling me when I don't fight for everybody's issues, then I'm actually picking who I will leave behind.
Yep.
That's what I feel like Cenk and Anna. Cenk and Anna have decided clicks matter more than fighting for what we need. And at this moment, we need a real vanguard to stand in the gap against what is about to come. And it's cozy enough.
Wow. Shout out to Mondale Robinson for name dropping the show on Francesca's podcast. I mean, wow. I mean, solidarity, bro. Really appreciate that.
To the Trumps of the world is more disgusting than what Mika and Joe Brzezinski did, or I should say Mika Brzezinski and Joe Scarborough did, because we expected that from them. Sure. I wasn't even surprised when it happened. Don't forget, when Trump first came on the scene, he was always on the Morning Joe. But when I see it coming from our side, it's disgusting.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that I just want to say that Mondale and I are not a minority here. I think there are a lot of people who we know and love deeply, who've been contributors to TYT, who still are there, who feel, the same way. But then again, and I agree with you. So you're calling for a changing of the guards, a stepping away. I'm here to say that's never going to happen. But you even told me before we did this show that you actually still support TYT monetarily, like you give them, subscriber money, because that's how much you actually believe in the importance of that platform, despite saying that you don't want to support it with your own voice right now because of the turn that they've been making.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the show, the network thrived before I got there. Rebel HQ got to 1 million subscribers when I was there. I think, like I said, I think they will go on. I think though, we need to be critical. We need to figure out a way to get rid of Cenk and Anna. That cancer can spread and metastasize, and I think we can't have that because it affects other people who truly are progressives over there in that space. And I know there are people, without implicating anybody, I know there are people over there that are unhappy with what's happening, but because of healthcare and other reasons, they can't say anything. Another reason we need to untie people's healthcare from jobs. People are forced to stay in spaces that are unhealthy for their belief systems simply because they need to be covered. And that is tragic. So.
And that's one of the things I think a lot of folks who are just regular able-bodied individuals that don't have any kind of tie at this point in their life to the healthcare system, they're not themselves trapped under the boot of our draconian healthcare system in this country, where Gavin and I, we've always had the freedom to just like stick our middle finger in our boss's face and be like, fuck you, dude. Like, I'll find a job across the street, right? But as you get older and as you start to interact with people who they have just like a recurring medication that they need to take, and it's like, oh yeah, my lived experience is pretty fine as long as I have this medication. Oh, and that medication, if you're uninsured, is $1,200, and if you have insurance, it's $60. And you're just like, what? It's like, yeah, dude, so I have to stay at this job because the insurance is really good. Otherwise I would have to make like an extra $1,100 at my new job just to break even. And it's like, wow, that's insane to think about. But of course it is a albatross around your neck when you're trying to, consider leaving a place you find toxic or destructive.
Oh yeah, 100%. It's one of the most horrific aspects of the healthcare system in this country. Not only do people have to stay in toxic work environments with abusive bosses oftentimes, but sometimes people have to stay in abusive relationships, right? Because their healthcare is provided to them via their partner. And yeah, specifically if you're disabled, specifically if you're dealing with a chronic illness or any sort of an illness, that's going to become an extra a huge issue. You can't just walk away from that if it's something that you rely on as far as life-saving care is concerned. So it's horrific. Also, yeah, I mean, think about, we've talked so much about the union busting episode at the Young Turks and how Cenk tried so aggressively to bust the TYT union, which I imagine is responsible for winning the employees a lot of those healthcare benefits and those rights which we talk about. So if you were one of those people that worked hard at the Young Turks and fought for your right to have a union, of course it would be tough to walk away from that, even if you totally disagree with what Cenk and Anna are doing now. Because again, you worked hard, you fought hard, literally, to win those rights. And especially in the media landscape right now, it's not like you can just go across the street, like you mentioned, and apply at some other progressive outlet or some other media outlet. No, there's very few jobs.
100%. And I mean, that's not just independent media, right? That's all media, as you're saying. If you are lucky enough to be a union employee in media, like if you're a unionized reporter or if you're a unionized presenter or anything like that, where you're actually working in the news industry and you have a paycheck from somebody else and you have health insurance from somebody else, like you fought so hard to get to that position. They are going to leverage that against you if you want to complain about an ethical decision that they're making, because they'll be like, where else are you going to go then? Where else are you going to go? Are you going to go to fantasy land? This is the best you've got. And that's how they oppress people. And that's how they subjugate people. And the fact that the home of progressives is using that as a tool to undermine their own employees' desire to push back on their right-wing pivot is crazy. It's honestly, it's disgusting. And I love how big Mondale's heart is. I love how optimistic he is. I love how he still chooses to monetarily support the Young Turks because he truly believes that the people like J.R. Jackson, like Francesca Fiorentini, like John Iadarola, the real heart and soul, among other nameless individuals who I'm sure work just as hard and tirelessly, but I just am not familiar with you on an interpersonal relationship because you don't have a front-facing role. Those people I know could do incredible things to continue working in progressive media. And I am so grateful that there are optimists out there like Mondale Robinson. But Gavin, I have to say, I am not hopeful like he is that the workers will be able to take the Young Turks from Cenk and Anna because the public demands it. I think we could get 1 million signatures and Cenk would stick both of his middle fingers in the air and say, it's mine, buddy. I'll nuke it before I give it back to you.
Yeah. No, unfortunately, I do agree with that. Although it's a appreciated thought from Mondale, because obviously, we do feel for all those employees, even that one audio guy who insulted our show and called us a knitting circle. Remember that? He was like, oh, I've listened to the Vanguard. He chimed in on their meltdown that one time. Those people are just normal folks working hard. And for that reason, no, I don't want the Young Turks to go out of business. I don't want the Young Turks to burn to the ground. Like those people have been working hard. They have contributed a lot to this organization and what it means. And I appreciate Mondale being like, maybe it's not too late to turn this around. Maybe it's not too late. If Cenk and Anna aren't going to change their tune, perhaps audience intervention, as unlikely as it is. I do think it's important to express that TYT is bigger than Cenk and Anna. And the reason why we talk about this is because, it is, in Cenk's own words, the biggest online progressive news network. He wants to act like it's crazy that people fixate on his show. And then the next thing out of his mouth is, we're the #1 progressive online news network. It's like, it's kind of important, bro. It's kind of important to talk about. But anyway, shout out to Francesca. Shout out to Mondale, speaking the truth, unfettered and unbossed. So really, awesome to see that courage.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Look out the door if you hear an ambulance. The Vanguard will be there, sir. The Vanguard will be there, sir.